Once again, good evening. If you've just joined us, this is ANN7 Prime. Our top story this half hour. President Jacob Zuma unveiled the Groot Marico Heritage site in the Northwest Province. The president recounted the days of his arrest with fellow comrades. He says they had to have a story in case they met police, and they always used different names. President Zuma says he wished some of his fellow comrades were alive to celebrate this day. The site is the place where activists crossed as they went into exile to continue with the struggle against apartheid. Recollecting the events that unfolded at the site, the president says he would love to write a book detailing his experiences during the liberation struggle.
There are very epic stories of those who left and who were indeed more clever than us in order to be arrested. Some of the comrades I was arrested with here are no longer alive. Some of them, we went to Robben Island together, and some of them we finally went into exile through other routes. No longer Groot Marico. I'm saying this because I think we can tell the story of our freedom fighting in many ways, in many respects, and many angles.
President Jacob Zuma Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo says that the heritage site will create employment for the people of Groot Marico. Zuma says the site will boost the tourism industry in the province.
Bahurutsi village, Zirast, as well as the surrounding areas in this province, it will also contribute towards cultural tourism, both domestically and internationally. That is what the democratic government seeks to achieve with the liberation heritage sites. We want to raise awareness of this rich legacy of our people's struggle, while also ensuring income-generating projects for our people.
The landscape on the N4 road remains a string attraction of features for tourists, with the site of arrest now to be unveiled today.
Meanwhile, Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo has debunked the allegations from the opposition.
I know that the opposition has been making a lot of noise and so on, and we can't stop them from making the noise. According to the department, we have spent not less than 2 million to make sure that this is put up. They were talking huge figures last year, you'll remember, that 6 million, wara and so on, but we don't want to get into figures.
I think it will do something for the tourists, for the people of Groot Marico, especially the Ramotsirimiwa people. Yeah, I think they will gain something from this event.
If people come from different countries coming to see this, they will sleep in the hotels and guest houses that are local. That will create more jobs for those who are working in that tourism department. So it will create in that way. Others I'm not sure, but for tourism, yes, it will create jobs.
I'm glad I'm here today, as our President Jacob Zuma was honored for being here, for being arrested here when he was busy going to fight for us.
Let's take a look at what the opposition is claiming versus the provincial government's rationale. The opposition says the monument is a disgraceful waste of 6 million rand of public funds. The Northwest government clarifies that less than 2 million rand was utilized for the same. The opposition says that they will fight the heritage site and destroy it. The government says the site was built to preserve South Africa's cultural heritage. And finally, the opposition says the money can rather be used to upgrade infrastructure and provide informal settlements with basic services. The provincial government has gone on record saying the heritage site will create jobs, promote tourism, and boost the local economy. And joining us live in studio, Walter Lukhuleni, PAC Secretary for Publicity. Sabelo Dlamini is with the National Freedom Party as their General Secretary. And Professor Beri Hanyane, political analyst and professor with the University of the Northwest. Mosiri Tsiane is with the South African Liberty Foundation as the chairperson. And also with Mosiri Tsiane Associates. And you at home, you're most welcome to give us a call 011-542-2186 or join us on social media at ANN7TV or at I am Cindy Mabi. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks so much for joining us. I mean, there's clarity now all along. I think since earlier this year when the announcement was made that there will be a heritage site, if not a plaque and statue erected in honor of President Jacob Zuma. We heard the figure of 6 million rand being banted around. Turns out there was minor confusion. It was actually a 6-meter tall statue. So we've come to this day now. What do you make out of it as the PAC?
Thanks, Cindy. As the PAC, our biggest problem is not about the statue being erected. Our biggest problem is the narrative that is being pushed by the ruling party. Because these heritage sites that they are spending taxpayers' money on are pushing a narrative that the ANC is the only liberation movement. Those are the only people who liberated our people. And it is the same narrative that was pushed by the apartheid government, where they suppressed everything else and only pushed the National Party position. This is the same position. We are saying if we are to rewrite the history of this country properly, we should include everyone who fought for this liberation.
All right, I understand that, but where then are you waiting for an invitation to participate in the symbolism of preserving the South African history as the PAC? Are you saying that you're essentially being left out of these kind of activities?
Look, we're engaging the ruling party on our own as the PAC. We're engaging them. That is why you have seen that our cadres, Poko cadres, are being released from jail, who were hanged and buried and kept as state property. They are being released from jail and being reburied with their families. So the ongoing process of engaging the ruling party is taking place. That is why we're saying we don't want to look at it from the narrative of how much money is being spent, because we believe that people should be honored who have fought for the struggle, but we're saying don't be selective in honoring the people. That is the engagement that we're taking with the
And it's a valid
party.
point that you're making, because you know that it was a collaborative effort in bringing down the reigns of apartheid. But Mosiri, in your view, number one, the narrative that was being peddled that it was 6 million rand solely for a bronze life-size statue of President Jacob Zuma, and in fact the clarity is now it was a 6-meter life-size a statue, not necessarily the price tag that we've been told. What do you make out of the response now from the Northwest under the Arts and Culture mandate to preserve our culture and heritage, saying that it was less than 2 million and they can justify it, that it will bring much needed employment and tourism?
Well, in this instance, one would take this moment and thank the Northwest government for being bold, the Premier in particular for being bold in the step that they've taken. In most instances, opposition party will make any other noise about the efforts or the work that is done by the African National Congress. This is not the first time. I mean, we can go back to the renaming of cities, the renaming of streets, and so forth. If you do and want to remind South Africans about where they come from, particularly about their history, there'll always be that noise that no, should not spend that much money, shouldn't do that. When oppositions take over our cities, in particular Tshwane, they'll build a lane, a cycling lane of more than 6 million, which is never used by the people of Tshwane. They should have used that money for other things, but they will not talk about. But in particular here, we're referring to this one. I think South Africa ought to be reminded about the efforts and the selflessness that were taken by individuals in making sure that our history is what it is today, that there is a change in our lives because there were people that participated in liberation. Then others want us to forget, and that should never be the case.
Yeah, but Mr. Dlamini from the National Freedom Party, General Secretary, good evening to you and thanks so much for joining us. Your view, and I think it's a dichotomy we find ourselves in, where certain quarters want to wash away what happened during the brutal struggle for liberation, the lives that were lost and the freedom that is still so fragile that we're enjoying. How then do you balance that with the need of also providing basic services?
Thank you very much. Again, to take what you call this back, we have to look at the books. If books are written in history or books are preserving some of the information, some other ways can be used also to preserve that information or whatever events or whatever incident that has taken place in the world. And secondly, when you look at whatever province that is looking toward that, they are looking in all aspects. One, to preserve the history. Two, to group those groupings, because those groupings were not well known as of now. History is going away. And three, they are looking at the inroad of income, which is in the form of what we call it tourism. You know, that on its own can, at the end of the day, save many lives, save many information required, but balancing. There is a way to balancing. You have to first find out from the people of Northwest, not maybe alarming every corner, because every corner where I'm staying, you find where the other organization where are taking powers, they are just recovering the street, using a lot of money. Recovering the street, which is the very same street that is being built.
Yeah, so you're saying we need to be prudent in how money is spent, and it must materially impact the communities where it's allocated.
As long as there is a proof to say there will be an income after this, it cannot be the waste. And then who is going to be responsible? It's not a person that we are talking about. It's not the people that we are talking about who were part of the history. But whoever has come up with that design, that particular someone surely should be maybe making sure that the preservative power, ethics, are in place.
All right, let's take a call. Amandla Emalahleni Laki in Meadowlands. Good evening to you, Amandla. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Hi, Yasin, how are you?
I'm good, thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you pass my greetings there from my homeboy, Jasmine? I know this guy. He's from my hometown, Jasmine, that guy from PAC.
Oh, all right. Mina Walter, Jasmine.
Yeah, listen.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I applaud the work done by Northwest government. We must not forget about where we come from. This heritage site will create employment and boost the tourism. So it's quite a good effort. I don't know, the opposition, they are always criticizing. There are many things South Africa is facing. We talk about the banking cartel, construction cartel, serious issues they don't talk about. Everything ANC they do, they criticize. I don't know what is happening in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandla. Decrying white-collar crime, saying that our focus is myopic in how we view the landscape of politics in the country. Lucky in Meadowlands, good evening to you. Hi, Lucky. All right, we'll go to Professor Perry Hanyani. We've lost Lucky there, but you're welcome to call in on 011-542-2186. Professor Hanyani, thanks so much for joining us. Your view, being in the Northwest yourself, we haven't been on the premises, so in terms of value or proposition, does it have exhibition centers? Will it be used for cultural events and hosting international delegates in justifying the money that's been spent already?
Cindy, good evening. Good evening to your panelists there, and of course, good evening to your viewers. Look, I think this is one act that the Northwest government should have avoided for now, learning lessons from similar instances where prominent figures of society, not necessarily dead but living, need to be immortalized. They should have indeed waited for a while until what I would refer to as the political dust has settled, and make sure, that's my second point now, to make sure that indeed this becomes part of a greater stream of things that will make sure that local economic development through tourism will indeed take place. I'm not too convinced that a bronze statue will on its own attract investments. I'm not convinced that a bronze statue will make sure that unemployment in a rural place called Groot Marico will overnight create jobs for millions of people who need such jobs, and make sure that the economies of scale of that particular area is increased in all fronts. I'm not convinced at all that this is a part of a broader scheme to promote social cohesion at a time when a lot of national celebrations in this country are celebrated at the behest of advancing particular ideological interests. We still wait to see as to whether indeed we have a national day of celebration where a lot of individuals from different persuasions will be able to unify and celebrate a common purpose. I'm left in a limbo here.
All right, Professor Hanyani, let's perhaps get other views, and hopefully people in the Northwest will call in as well. Tapelo, we see you. We'll start with Tsepo in Meadowlands. Good evening to you. Hi, Tsepo. Or Tapelo, is Tapelo in the Northwest there? Tapelo Dimelang? Okay, let's try Mozi in Peter Maritzburg. Good evening to you.
Hi, evening Cindy and viewers at home.
Good evening.
Evening. One would like to make a contribution by saying, yes, indeed, tourism does play a major and a big role in any project investment in any country or any region. If you look at Africa as a whole, we are very rich in terms of culture, tourism, and also local economic development. Such a stage, we need to appreciate good work. We need to get rid of this angry nation, because now we have turned to be an angry nation. We are failing to appreciate good work. Each time we are angry, we are criticizing. Let us applaud good work. Recently, the president did honor Steve Biko in appreciating him and his family, to say, yes, indeed, the PAC did play a role in contributing to liberate the people of this country. It's very arrogant to have someone in the studio and misplace information and also come up with false information, misleading the nation, and say the ANC want to be seen as the one which only liberated the people of this country. It's not true.
All right, we'll get Walter to respond. Yes, Moza, really appreciate your call. We go back to the Northwest. Tapelo, good evening to you and your views on this heritage site, Groot Marico, whether it will yield the return on investment. What's your view?
Hello.
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
I'm good. You know what? I was looking at the ANN7, whereby they say the opposition party said they did spend a lot of money for the statue of Mr. Zuma. My concern is, how will they know that it was 6 million, whereby they were not there whenever they decided to make the statue? And the other thing is, why don't they go to Madiko Game Reserve, whereby there are some notices due to tourism? The people at Malatedi, they benefit from the lodge called the Tagadu River Temple. Why don't they just let the people of Groot Marico enjoy their happiness and freedom? Because the thing is, there's no way people can afford to justify freedom. The reason why Mr. Zuma goes to Groot Marico, somewhere, somehow, is going to upgrade the history there at Groot Marico. So when the opposition parties are participating against, it shows us that they will never gonna do something big for their grandparents.
Oh, all right. Tapelo, thank you so much. Saying Groot Marico communities will benefit from this. And let's take a Sihle in Soweto. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Cindy, and good evening to your panel. Cindy, I think the problem with DA and EFF, the problem is that this whole thing is actually more about Zuma. And their main project is this Jacob Zuma project. I do not see anything wrong with what they are doing, because to me there are many ways of preserving the history. A lot of history it's not getting, recorded in books or in other ways. This is one way of preserving the history. I think the main problem with EFF and DA is that it talks about Zuma. So now they're creating this thing to people that anything that has to do with Zuma, it's something that is actually negative. It's something that people must hate. It's something that is actually wasting money, corruption, and that. That is how I actually see this whole thing.
Sister, we appreciate, yes.
Okay,
thank you so much. Much appreciated. Just to throw that to our panelists, number one, that this is not necessarily a fruitless expenditure or wasteful expenditure. It is in the interest of the preservation of our heritage and culture. And I want to look at the Department of Arts and Culture, what their mandate is, especially if you look at the integrated development programs that various municipalities would have. It would render Arts and Culture, or DAC, redundant if they cannot do certain programs that speaks to the necessity of preserving our culture. Walter.
No, as the PAC, our position is very clear. We don't look at the costs. To us, it is about the history of the liberation struggle. That is why we don't have a problem with that statue being created. We have a problem that 20 kilometers from Groot Marico in Zwartregens, there was a cadre of the PAC who is now a chapel, Reverend Mkopodi, is not being immortalized in that area, in the Northwest. But you look at the universities, you have a Walter Sisulu University, you have a Nelson Mandela University, you don't have a Robert Sobukwe University. So we're saying, as you continue to preserve the history, don't be biased against the other people. I had a caller here talk about that the PAC has been honored. The PAC has not been honored. People have been exhumed. There's no monument for those who have been hanged. Who were hanged in 1963 who are being exhumed. There's no monument for that.
Yeah, but shouldn't you be proactive then? So to put this to the test, whether there is a concerted effort by the ANC-led government to exclude anybody else, if you were to pitch that and say, look, we would be proposing to have a university, a monument, a statue in honor of our fallen heroes.
We have done that. We are in the. You see, in the past we had leaders who were shouting outside there. This is not what we're doing as the PAC. What we're doing, we're engaging with government in those spheres. So we are moving forward in that sense. That is why you have seen that in the past, government would not fund a PAC-led March 21. But now, government is funding because we are engaging the government.
All right, so there's progress being made. You're feeling less alienated or disenfranchised as the PAC.
Yes.
I just want to move on to another point, that the obsession with anything that's got a whiff of an involvement from Jacob Zuma by name, by symbolism, by association is what the opposition is fixated with. They're not necessarily wanting to see the value of this. Your response?
Yes, it's true that in most instances, anything that has to do with our current president, it will always be referred as being corrupt, as being negative, and so forth. The caller that highlighted that point was truly on point. But be that as it may, in general, anything that has to do with our history, some people wish us to forget it. They do not want us to our history to be reflected, the leaders that participated in our freedom to be remembered. There was an outcry when there were changing of streets in cities in Joburg, in city of Tshwane, and in general everywhere else. There's been that outcry. The purpose thereof is to make South Africans forget the reality that we have today. Why the majority of black South Africans are poor. Why are we living in majority of us in townships? Why is there no development for blacks? Why is the capitalist system only emphasized within a certain race, particularly white? Why is there no movement? The opposition, and it's sad to see that the EFF has joined it. While it ought to have raised a different voice, it has joined the DA, wishing that it can make sure that the history of African National Congress, of PAC, of AZAPO are forgotten. That should not be. They should forever be preserved, so that at all times, generations and generations to come should know that. I want to differ with Professor when he says that he doesn't see a success. This is the same sentiment that was said when the stadiums were built in South Africa. There was a lot of negativity that was running around and say there won't be success, these things will be built and there'll be nothing else but elephants, white elephants that will never be used. Today we're using the stadiums. They have regenerated us rather not an income, but rather an asset that we have. These this program that has done in Groot Marico will, over a period of time, provide the people of Groot Marico with a lot of fruits to come.
Yes, and Mr. I just want to test that. Why are you saying that we can preserve culture in a less or in a non-monetary way? In other words, document or we can orate stories to children or put it on audio tapes. But you're saying that the heritage site in itself could have been something that could have been put off. But I want to put it to you, why then can't we have symbolism within the spaces of which communities live in? The significance of the 1963 arrest at that site of President Jacob Zuma and other cadres. Why do you feel that this is not a way of preserving culture?
Look, what you are saying is for any voice like yourself as you are echoing it. One has to take it a step. A gentleman from PAC should take a certain step. It's only about this time around. It has been done on the other province with a person like people they seem to hate. Today, as we are sitting here, this place should be shut down because they hate a man like with passion. It's not about this. Because when you talk of things like books, we can preserve things in books and preserve things in some other small other things, then people will simply not go into it. But such like what you call things, bigger as they are, and then you see people when they come to Union Building in what you call it, when they come closer to the president, the former president of the country, Nelson Mandela, how do they feel? That this is kind of what you call preserving, also putting into perspective in a tangible form of other than books that are going to be sold by the very same experts who are talking of the expenditures. They are preserving for themselves to sell it to us, to sell it, not to be able to view it.
All right, Mr. I think in essence we agree. Let's just get final word from Professor Hanyane. You're still not sold. You think this could have been put off, even if it was part of the IDP or Integrated Development Plan of the Northwest?
Yeah. Cindy, one of your panelists caught my attention by trying to equate the whole issue of erecting the statue with the building of the 2010 World Cup Stadia. I think it's a false comparison. Let us ask stadium management company today, who are the custodians of managing these stadiums, whether indeed they are making money, profit out of these megalomaniac structures which have been reduced to nothing else but elephant structures. You have Cape Town City that struggled to get a place to train in Cape Town, and yet flew the Cape Town flag very well.
Yeah.
Secondly, the issue of statute broadly in this country cannot be isolated from the broader debate on statutes per se. Ask hashtag fees must fall, what happened to the statue of Cecil John Rhodes in Cape Town, and what happened to other statutes. All the problems will come back to haunt Groot Marico come late 2017, early 2018.
Professor Hanyane, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks indeed for your time. And our panelists here in studio, we continue on social media. You at home, thanks indeed for calling in as well. We take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.